Okay, so let's just settle. Some of you are back from lunch, so maybe the food is digesting. So just allow that to happen. I tried to have my morning coffee and my lunch all at the same time, so now I'm very full. Feet flat on the floor. And I think what I'd like to do is continue with the question and answer from this morning. We haven't quite finished with Bill's questions. And then we can do a little bit of footwork. And then I'd like to, Marion sent some questions, so I'd like to address those and then open it up. And in the last half hour, we will do a Vajrasattva purification meditation, and I will take the mantra a little bit slowly for those people who requested it. And it'll be the first time that Kenny's been able to join us live, because Kenny's been doing it via YouTube for quite some time. I didn't realize. So he's part of our group, although we don't really know him. But we do now. Hey, Kenny. All right. So before we start, just try, because you've probably been having conversations, looking at emails, whatever else. So just try and bring yourselves back into this kind of remnant of stillness. And try and be present for yourself and for the other members of the group. Just try and bring your mind here to the same place your body is. And, you know, even though we're in conversation, we can still sit in a way that's good for our posture. So feet flat on the floor, sitting on top of your sits bones, unless you're in the cross-legged position. If you're in the cross-legged position, still be sitting on your sits bones. Shoulders aligned with the hips, and just imagine lengthening the spine. And take a nice deep breath. And just maybe we meditate on the breath, the sensation of the air flowing in and out of the nostrils for about 5 minutes while we settle the mind. If you like, you can practice this morning's meditation, breathing in blissful, radiant white light, breathing out all the problems and the delusions and the negativities. And the people that weren't here this morning, this is a meditation that you have done before. And if you notice your mind is moving off, you're having to move the body or adjust yourself, just notice what it was that prompted you to move. And if you feel like you need to adjust yourself again, what would it feel like to stay still instead? So is it an emotional feeling of discomfort that makes you want to move? Physical feeling of discomfort? Okay, everyone, just relax. Wonderful to see you all, and we just think we motivate as we continue to be of benefit to ourselves and to others by doing this question answer, by doing these meditations, by coming here together from different parts of the planet. It's pretty cool. Okay. So I'm going back to these questions of Bill's. So we're missing Hin. I am wondering if she's okay. Did you hear anything, Shayla? No, okay. Mary, I'm wondering if you'd mind dropping her an email just to make sure she's all right. Thank you. Okay, so Bill's, yeah, thank you so much. Just want to make sure she's doing okay. And tell her she doesn't have to come. I'm not asking her to come. I'm just wanting to check that she's all right. Yeah, okay. So this concept of imprints of negativity of the body, speech, and mind. So, Bill, when you say its origin, are you asking who first about that, or?
Yeah, I got the sense during one of your sessions that the last part about imprints of negativity was added on after the fact. And I'm just wondering, I just wanted to learn more about that, where that concept came from.
I mean, if I said that, I think it was incorrect. It's part of the practice. And I suspect it came from Buddha. I've not heard of it. I think it's something that Buddha talked about because Buddha was always talking about mental continuum. There's also many, many teachings so the trouble with a lot of Buddha's teachings weren't actually written down initially, and then quite some time later they were. But it does seem to be a lot of the teachings, a lot of the sutras, and a lot of these concepts came from Shakyamuni Buddha. So I suspect if you traced it all back. But the thing is, physically, it also makes sense. You know, when we talk about physically leaving an imprint, So, we put our hands in the sand, that's an imprint. They say, Buddha would say that imprints of actions, whether virtuous or non-virtuous, stay in our mind stream. And when you think about it, when you watch a scary movie at night and you then go to, well, no, I don't either because I can't. But okay, say if you watch say you watch some rubbish on TikTok before you go to bed, and then you'll find you might be dreaming about it. The imprints, it's gone into your mind. It's in there. Venerable Bina talks a lot about these things go in there and they stay there. So it's the same in physics. You can create matter, but you cannot destroy it. But you can change it into something else. So once you've created something, you can't uncreate it. You can't make it, you can't make that atomic bomb nothing. You can change it into something else, but you cannot take it back to that place where it wasn't there. When you say, someone tells you, gives you an image of something, you're like, oh, I can't unsee that. It's there, it's in your mind. You can change it, but you can't not see it any longer. So I think we all know what the word imprint means. But in terms of Buddhism, imprints are things that you put into your mind. You watch a movie, you listen to a podcast, you have a conversation with someone. And non-virtuous and virtuous imprints sort of stay in the mind stream. So actions of negativity of our body, speech, and mind, things we do, things we say, things we think, also stay in the mind stream. And even though we purify those during the Vajrasattva practice, according to this particular practice, according to these teachings, you're still left with this, like when you have garlic in a jar, there's still this kind of like after smell. You've got to kind of wash it out really well to get rid of that smell of garlic. So this is an analogy they use that's often used in this particular practice, is this kind of like an extra wash to kind of get rid of the imprints, because they're almost like seeds, that like weeds that could possibly grow again, because the imprint is still there. So you're trying to just eradicate completely from the mind stream an imprint of negativity. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. And if you have any more, please ask, because it's helpful for others. But I think that you'll find this is based on these teachings but it does make sense. You can't do an action, either virtuous or non-virtuous or even neutral, without it somehow staying around. Even if you purify it, the feeling is still kind of there. Yeah, it all takes time. Anyway, the other thing too is to remember these practices. Your spiritual practice is going to take a while. Nothing happens overnight, and we're living in a society where we can get things instantly. We're living in I went to Singapore a few years ago for one of Rinpoche's teachings. It was 2018. And we stayed in the house of a dear friend. And I discovered, to my amazement, I could order milk and blueberries on Amazon, and it would turn up in 2 hours in a little polystyrene box with ice in it. I was amazed. I didn't even have to leave the house. It was hot outside. I didn't want to walk to the corner store. I could just ask Amazon to send it. That just blew me away. And but mind you, they do have a lot of rubbish in Singapore. They collect their bins there every single day. They collect their trash every single day. And probably part of the reason is because everyone's purchasing stuff on Amazon, blueberries, milk, whatever. It's a little bit shocking. And your fourth question is, what are the 3 times merits of myself and others? I think what Rinpoche is talking about here is past, present, and future. And the relationship between the Om and the Hum. Om and hum are syllables. And I did do a little bit of research onto Om, Ah, Hum. 1 second. So I was curious of what I found. It's the Dhyani Buddhas. It's the bell.
The reason I asked is that it seemed like they were almost identical.
Ah, but they're not. Let me share you a picture of what this looks like. So this is what Om looks like. It's also used in yoga. I think it's the sound Om is believed to be the primordial sound of all creation. I love that. But anyway, it's Sanskrit. There's going to be many levels of meaning. And according to this particular website, it says the sound vibration of Om cleanses away pride. And they also believe that the syllable Om lives within the samsaric realm of the gods. I mean, it's very esoteric, this language. So, and that's what I suspect this is the Sanskrit. There is a Tibetan Om, and let me see if I can find a picture of that for you. On an image. Oh, okay. I'll show that to you in a minute. And here's the hum. Again, a different syllable. Syllable hum, we work to dissolve our attachments to aggression and hatred. I think this is probably a little bit to the side of what our teachers might say in this tradition. So let me just stop sharing this one. I'm going to share this one. So if you get an actual visual of what they look like, they're not the same at all. Om, Ah, Hum. So the word mantra means mind protection. So these mantras are designed to protect the mind as well as purify, create merit. Om stands for the body, Ah for speech, and Hum for the mind, according to this particular text. They represent the possibility of transformative blessings of the body, speech, and mind from all the Buddhas, past, present, and future. So that's what they look like. There's the Om on the left and the Hum on the right. Yeah. So did that answer that question, Bill?
Well, I was looking at the 14-page handout from Venerable Robina, and at the pages 12 and 13 provide definitions for Om, which is the qualities of Buddha's holy body, speech, and mind.
Mm-hmm.
Then Hum is the Vajra holy mind, and it just seemed like those were very similar to me.
You mean her in her practice?
In her 14-page document that she did.
Okay, let me just go. The meaning of the mantra. Om, the qualities of Buddha's holy body, speech, and mind, all that is auspicious and of great virtue, value. And then Hum, what is she saying? The Vajra holy mind. I think she's just taken this as a direct, and then Hum down here, the transcendental wisdom of great bliss. So there's two separate translations for it here. Do you see that? Let me share this. So we've got here, Sheil, I'll get you in a tick. I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I see it.
See, we've got Om, and then Hum here, the Vajra Holy Mind, and then Hum, in this context, the transcendental wisdom of great bliss. So even those two hums aren't the same. It changes according to where they are in the mantra. According to this, I might have to do a little bit more research into that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that one's way in the weeds.
Sorry?
That one's probably way in the weeds.
It might be a little in the weeds, this one. Yeah. So the relationship between them, Om Ah Hum seems to be a very basic mantra in Tibetan Buddhism. And Om Mani Padme Hum, the English translation of that is all hail to the jewel in the lotus. But when you actually break those English words down and try and match them to the Sanskrit, as you can see, they have different meanings in different contexts. So without knowing anything about Sanskrit myself, I feel a little bit like I'm not really in a position to be talking about the relationship between Om and Hum. Other than that, and also too, every time, if you do a yoga class, they finish Om. Everyone chants Om together. Lamsa Rinpoche would say that the letter A, R, contains all of the Dharma in it. That one particular, because it represents the alphabet. So, I mean, you can get very into the weeds here. You can get very, very esoteric. So it just depends how esoteric you want to be and how crazy you want to make yourself. But some people, some people find this fascinating. They want to be in the weeds with everything. So, and there are courses at university, people are doing PhDs in it. So it just depends on what makes you happy and what works for you, how your mind is. Okay, and then here we're talking, what are the 5 transcendental wisdoms? Ah, ha, ha, ho. How did you put those two together? Just asking, because I've not. What I think the 5 transcendental wisdoms are referring to are the 5 Buddha families. And they're also called the 5 dhyani Buddhas. There's also 5 kinds of wisdom which appear in the mind when the mind is purified by the 5 disturbing emotions, and the natural mind appears. And all of those 5 wisdoms are represented by one of the 5 Buddha families. So we can get very into the weeds here too. But you see those 5 colored scarves when you've gone to do the body, speech, and mind mandala offering and teachings. You see there's a white scarf. That's the Vajra family. A blue scarf that represents the Kshobhya. You'll see a yellow scarf, Ratnasambhava. Then you'll see a red scarf, Amitabha. And then you'll see a green scarf, Amagosiddhi. So what they're representing the 5 Buddha families. So Vajrasattva, I think, is Vajrayana. It's white. They're generally the white Buddhas, Vajra family. And I don't know how much into the weeds you would like to go.
No, I was just curious.
Okay. But you can. Anyway, if you look up the 5 dhyani Buddhas, and also too, they're sprinkled throughout our practices. So if you're doing the prostrations practice, the 35 Buddhas, you'll notice they're in there. So the first 7 Buddhas are the Akshobhya family. The next 7 Buddhas are the Vajrayana family, white, blue ones first, white ones next, then the yellow ones, and then the red ones, and then the green ones. And that's how I ended up learning them, because I didn't realize that because 35 Buddha is quite difficult to learn at first because it's long. But when you break it down and you go, oh, all these Buddhas belong to this family, these Buddhas belong to that family, then it was actually a lot easier for me to learn. So it actually made it kind of simpler. But we can go very into the weeds here with Tibetan Buddhism, and best to keep it as simple as possible because you can do like eons and lifetimes of study on it. It's very colorful, very heavily ritualistic, and everything has meaning. Everything has meaning.
Yeah, the only reason I asked was that was one of the, again, definitions from Venerable Rosina, that it was one of the two or three that just didn't jump out at me in terms of the answer. It's page 13 of her handout.
Page 13.
And
the other thing you also can do is you can maybe ask her. Where are we? Page 13 and 12.
It's near the bottom of page 13. Anyway, I was just asking about
the five transcendental wisdoms. I think that represents the five Buddha families. I think that, this is the English translation of that Sanskrit, right? Yeah, so I think that's what it's saying. That represents the five transcendental wisdoms right there. So you can do a 10-year PhD on just that one little line. Anyway, I hope that's been helpful.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for hogging the airways.
No, I think it's been very helpful for everyone, because what it does is it opens it up for people. So I really thank you very much for your questions. It's been nice because it got everybody thinking as well. And Sheil, you've had your hand up for a while, and Mudit also wanted to ask a question. But Sheil, just ask your question first, and then we'll go to Mudit after.
Just quickly, is it Om Hum or is it Om Hung?
Oh, it depends. People do both. So you will hear both. I guess it just depends up to you. It's up to you and to your teachers. In this particular text, it's been written Hum. But Hung is also, it's not incorrect to do Hung as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Mudit.
Hi, Venerable.
Hi.
I've been in and out of your meditations over the last year.
Yeah.
And I really loved your the Friday evenings and, the daily evening meditations.
Nice.
I'm still very new to the whole path. I just have like basic questions on the meditation itself. And I think it also comes down to like me explaining to a friend who's not a Buddhist, the aspect of like imagination. Is it simply, I was trying to explain it and I couldn't find the right words, and I realized that you've actually explained this in your evening meditations, the aspect of that if you visualize it, it becomes reality, or like how your thoughts dictate reality and your moods. So is it simply talking about thinking positive? Like, is Vajrasattva the same as, I don't know, imagining a Superman, for example? Is that the same sort of psychological benefit?
Yeah. I mean, when they're training elite athletes, for example, what they do is they ask them to imagine themselves on the stand, like in first place. So you're just faking it until you make it, really. And that's how they say it in Tibetan Buddhism. You don't necessarily feel that you are purified necessarily. You don't necessarily, can't necessarily, I mean, Lamsa Rinpoche is said to, Kadrila is said to be able to see the Sambhogakaya aspect of the Buddhas, which is that they could see Vajrasattva. If Vajrasattva was here, they would be. Kadrila is able to see His Holiness as Chenrezig. She faints every time. When she was younger, she would faint when His Holiness drove past because she was seeing Chenrezig. But I can't see Chenrezig. Some people can see those Buddhas. But so what we do is we just imagine. And we just imagine and it, because it's such a virtuous image, to bring to mind light, purification, compassion, love. It can just be a ball of light on the crown of the head, and you just say that ball of light represents all the goodness in the world, all the goodness in the universe, and you're bringing that into your consciousness. So it's not that, you're using your mind to act as if. You're using your mind to bring in virtue, bring in goodness, bring in kindness, you're training your mind away from negativity and attachment and towards something else that's more positive. So I don't know if I've answered your question quite, but I use the word imagine rather than visualize because some people can't visualize very well. And visualize freaks people out because, I'm a terrible visualizer, I can't do this. So you just imagine it instead. It's the same thing. And I started using that when I was leading meditations at Kopan because I felt, we had large groups there, very large groups of over 100 and lots of different minds in those groups. So it's just an easier term for people.
Is that the same thing, imagining and visualizing?
Pretty much.
Okay. I mean, this is the same, it's synonyms, right?
Same what, sorry?
They're synonyms, right? I mean, the same thing.
I suspect if you looked it up, it would be a synonym. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why there's a sense, how thoughts, sometimes during meditations, there's a sense of seeing thoughts as just thoughts. So the power of thought have kind of reduced in some sense.
Yes, because you want to really take a step back from these thoughts that we think actually are part of who we are. So those thoughts that are angry, those thoughts that are, we make stuff up, which is kind of scary, but we all do it. We worry about things that haven't even happened. We worry about things in the future. We could be dead tomorrow. I'm not saying that we shouldn't take care of our future, but we really can't be in control of things that we can't control. If there's something that you can do something about, then do it. But if you can't do something about something, then perhaps not really worthwhile worrying about it. So we use a lot of energy and a lot of brain space to about things that aren't really worthwhile. And we're just creating imprints in our mind for negativity. So when I was working as a psychologist, this was many years ago, they started to bring in this research regarding neural pathways. And I think it's getting to be fairly established now. But thoughts create neural pathways in the brain. So the negative neural pathways, if they're not used, they will just atrophy. And this is why the brain is so malleable. It's really flexible. It can change. So the positive neural pathways will be put in place instead. So if you're habitually thinking, I'm a horrible person, I'm a really bad person, you're digging a groove that goes deeper and deeper and deeper until it kind of is like, it just kind of gets pretty set in there. But if you're constantly sort of somehow counteracting that groove or relabeling how you're thinking, the kind of this, I'm a horrible person, I'm a horrible person, I'm a horrible person, that is going to just start to atrophy. That neural pathway will sort of atrophy. It won't really exist. So this is what we are trying. It's actually a physical, it's not just mental, psychological, it's actually physical impact on the brain, impact on the consciousness. It's kind of, I think we don't really realize how deep it goes. But the fact that some of you have been here for over 2 years tells me that you must understand it at some level. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep coming back, or you wouldn't keep doing it. So, yeah, I think there's many things in the universe we can't really explain. Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't want to go against the power of imagination.
You wanted to what?
I do not want to go against the power of imagination.
Yeah, and you shouldn't, because you're using your imagination to create positivity and using it to counteract negativity. And that's one way we can, our imagination is very powerful. And I think what these practices are trying to help us do is to redirect our imagination from total rubbish into virtue. And it benefits ourselves and it benefits others when the mind is virtuous.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know how you feel when you come across a person and all they want to do is rip you off, because all it's in their mind is they don't see you as a human being. They see the potential to get something out of you. So, we have to kind of change our minds so that we're not that kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that makes any sense. Sorry, I'm uncomfortable. I have a cushion here that's not really beneficial for my sit bones. Okay, I'm getting rid of that. Okay. Okay, that's a little better. Okay, any more questions before I move on to Marion's questions? Nothing. Okay, Morda, I'm just wanting to make sure you are satisfied with what we talked about. Okay. And don't hesitate to ask if you have anything else. So, all right. So Marion wrote this morning. Marion, do you mind if I read your question out? It's okay? Okay. I'm going to close this one. So I think this question from Marion is probably something that we all experience. So she says, what if after doing the Vajrasattva practice, I don't feel or trust that the negative action from my body, speech, and mind has been purified? Since this is psychological, then I am the one who's thinking this way. How do I transform this thought feeling? All I can say is it's going to take time, and it comes back to really what we were talking about with Mordit. It's just we have to act as if. And, there is one part of the practice, every time I say it, I just wonder, how's this landing with people? And that is that section. Let me just get back to it. Yeah. I think it's after, it's the end of the imprints of negativity, body, speech, and mind. Now that you are completely purified, not one atom of negativity left in your mind stream. Even the subtlest obscurations to your enlightenment have been removed. So you're asking people to really imagine something that perhaps isn't happening at the moment. And, when Venerable Rabina leads this, she'll always say, really try and feel that. So for a second, you have to turn your mind to imagining what it would be like to be completely purified. But we don't have any experience of that. We only have our teachers, stories from Shakyamuni Buddha, virtuous people in the world. I mean, we only have other examples. This is what that would look like. So we have to sort of turn it inwards and go, well, what would I look like? What would it be like for me if I was completely purified, if I didn't have any delusion in my mind? So say it that way. How would my life be if I didn't have any delusions in my mind? If I woke up in the morning and I wasn't worried or depressed or anxious or jealous or bitter or feeling grudges, what would my life be like? And we probably find we'd have a lot more energy to start with. We wouldn't be saying things that we later regret or flashing off emails that we wish we hadn't, or even telling ourselves how stupid we are, which is what we do when we stub our toe or bang the car or whatever. Do you know how it is? It's like, so I think what we could do here is imagine, or just imagine for 5 seconds even, what would I look like? What would it be for me if I didn't have any of these delusions in my mind? So think of it that way. rather than I'm completely purified, I'm perfect. You can think of it the other way around if that makes more sense to you. But it is, you're right. It's a bit of a hard call, that one. Yeah. So Marion's next question. Ooh, can you speak about the emptiness of the I and the emptiness of the negative action? So we're talking about the 3 circles here. Is that what you're talking about? It's pretty it's kind of basic. There's a very sweet article from Rinpoche about the Vajrasattva practice on FPMT called Giving Negativity a Blow. Where are we? Now let me get, but I want to get back to something else that I think is going to be simpler for people. So what we're talking about in these 3, we're talking about emptiness, of that all things do not exist, all phenomena does not exist the way we think it does. We don't think that phenomena is not solid. I mean, I think this cup is solid, but it's got chips on it now. Doesn't look the way it did when I first bought it. It's made of many different parts. Somebody designed this thing. Someone decided what color it was going to be. So it's not existing in and of itself. So if we start there, this idea of emptiness. And also, Marion, the teachings from Kadrila are now available, so you can listen to them as well. But we've got 3 aspects of an action that are all completely empty of inherent existence. And the first one is the individual performing the action. So we're performing an action, right? And then there's the object that the action is performed towards or committed. So that's also empty of inherent existence. And then there's the action itself. And in our text, we're talking about karma, but karma and action mean the same thing. So then again, all things are empty of existing from their own side. So what I'd like the example of from this morning, where Barbara and Sheil were talking about how thinking about the Chinese situation a little bit differently shows that it doesn't exist inherently as a bad situation from its own side. The actions for some people, for many people, of the Chinese the result was positive. So you can't necessarily say, excuse me, that for everybody that action was negative. So what we're talking about here is a negative action may not be negative for everyone. So therefore is not solid. It's not existing in and of itself as being bad. The person that commits the action isn't in and of itself bad. The result of the action isn't in and of itself bad for everyone. So therefore, it has to be, it can't be solid. And so then we apply that to ourselves. This is particularly important for the prisoners. When I did this Vajrasattva practice with the prisoners many, many years ago, excuse me, they were so relieved to hear that they were not inherently bad people. Even though society has thrown them away and locked them up, and most of them weren't having any communication with their families because their families were embarrassed to know them, to be near them. And they were just kind of thrown out like garbage. And then to have someone come along and say, but you're not inherently bad. That thing you did isn't inherently bad. was a great relief to them, and that you can purify that action that harmed others. Excuse me. So, yeah. What do you think about that, Marilyn? Do you have anything more to say about that? Does anyone have anything to say about that? No? Marion?
Oops. Well, I think I get hung up on, conventional reality that, which I guess sometimes I want to just think of it as like coexisting with emptiness, because we do exist conventionally. And I think that's the aspect that sometimes I feel like trips me up, that, yeah, I mean, so I feel like needing to think more about causes and conditions, and the lack of inherent existence.
And also
and applying that to, certain situations that I feel like I come up against, and yeah.
I mean, it's fine to think about all this stuff when our life is going swimmingly. And then when something happens that challenges our status quo, what do you say here? Status quo. It's sort of, all of a sudden this idea of emptiness gets thrown out the window, and we just grasp onto our pain or our suffering, or how can I change this? And some situations are really, really difficult. It's very hard to accept. This is my karma right now. But it doesn't mean to say we have to sit back and give up or fight and struggle. We have to use our wisdom to know, okay, so this is happening. What is the best way I can handle this situation without causing any more damage? And also, it's not going to be like this forever. It will change. Everything changes all the time. Look at my poor little bottle. It's got dings on the end. I dropped it.
Yeah.
So it's not new anymore. As my friend Kunsang used to say, who passed away, he died, so he wasn't permanent either. He's French. Now this bottle is yours, Kati. You dropped it, it's yours now. But it doesn't hold heat as well as it did before. Yeah, I mean, this whole idea of emptiness, it just takes a long time to seep in. And I have to say, I'm not really qualified to be talking about it, but I just do the best I can. So all you're going to be getting is what I understand at my level. And I'm going to be listening to Kadrala's teachings again, because I found it really, really helpful. And I suggest that you do the same. And also, too, I get hung up on conventional reality as well. So you're not the only one. I think everybody in this room does too. Barbara, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just had a comment of something that was so helpful for me from Venerable Rabina.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, first off, just know where you're at. Know where you're at with all of these teachings. And then the ones that I don't understand, the whatever, is to aspire.
Mm-hmm.
Is aspire that someday you will understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Or aspire that, yep, that it will sink in. I know Vajrayana is very like, ooh, intimidating to me. And she's like, okay, that's where you're at. And then just aspire that someday you will be there.
Yeah.
And that has really been helpful for me.
Yeah. I thank you so much for sharing that, because I think you're right there. And I've found, myself with my own practice, it's like, well, I have no idea what that is all about, but I guess it's almost so much and so overwhelming. It's almost like it doesn't really invite you to try and know everything all at once. So like we said at the beginning of our meditations, you can only be where you're at and just accept that. That's just where you are. And it's even on a day-to-day basis. Yes, that's very helpful. Thank you. Yes, Bill.
I was just going to say at the start of their practice, I really like the fact that you and Venerable Ramina emphasize the fact that there is all this negativity, but we can create positivity. And then at your last comment, a couple of comments ago, where at the end of the practice, if you just think back on, what would it be like if I were totally purified? It provides a nice set of bookends for the entire practice. And that I find that really helpful myself anyway.
Yeah, and I actually think the practice was given by Lama Yeshe. So I think we've got Venerable Rabina's cobbled it together from teachings from Lama Yeshe. Yeah. So this is very much, I think Lama Yeshe was actually very much about encouraging Westerners to think differently about our lives, and that I find that also very helpful. But I also found your Marion's question actually helpful, because it helped me to reframe it as what would it look like if I was free from delusion, rather than if you can't imagine yourself being completely purified, imagine yourself as being free from delusion, which is actually the same thing, but it's a different way of approaching it. And so I think for us Westerners, it might, because we know what it's like when if you've been in a period of anxiety or depression about a particular thing, and then that is no longer there, or if you've been sick, for example, you've had a cold or you've had some kind of illness, and then you get better, all of a sudden you're free from that illness. And so that's what you have to imagine when you're feeling unwell, is what do you feel like when you're actually well? What do you feel like? What's your energy like when you're well? You can apply the same principle to this purification practice. What will I look like? What will my mind be like? What will my life be like when I'm free from this negativity? So I think that's one way to think about it. Anyway. Any more questions? Well, I've got one more question from Marion. She says, if we are unaware of something we have done as being negative, then the karma will continually multiply. Are you asking whether it will or not? Or are you saying it will?
I'm saying that it will. I mean, I felt like, I think that's what it says, right? Unless it's purified, and that it.
There's those, you have to have at least 4 things in place before a karma gets set in cement. You have to have the actual act. You have to have the intention to do the action. You have to have the action itself. You have to have the thing or the object there before you, and you have to then, the thing or there before you, have the intention, the person, the action, and then you have to rejoice in what you did. So if one of those elements is missing, like you trod on an ant accidentally, you're not going to be collecting a full karma of killing an ant. If you tread on an ant by mistake, I mean, there may be some non-virtuous karma there. It would be better if you hadn't, but you didn't intentionally kill the ant. You didn't rejoice about killing the ant. You didn't have I'm going to get rid of you. You didn't do that. So you didn't actually create the negative karma of killing the ant. So that is in, those teachings are in karma, and also the 10 non-virtuous actions. And then there's all those teachings about around karma. There's a lot of those kinds of teachings. So maybe we can do a meditation on that one morning. But that is, Venerable Rabina talks about that a lot. So she talks about that very, very clearly. So if you've ever listened to any of her teaching, if you can find a teaching of hers on karma, you'll find a lot of help there. So it's not as simple as doing an action and being oblivious to it. You've got to have some intention there. And you've got to have an understanding that what you did was satisfying to you and you're glad about it.
Mm.
Like this guy, the Gilgo Beach guy, he's in so much trouble. I mean, karmically, it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking how much trouble he's in. So none of us here are going to be in trouble like that. You're never going to be in trouble like that karmically. But when you have full knowledge of something, you think it's great, you continue to do it. You are rejoicing afterwards. Amazing. So bad. So you don't have any of that, so don't worry about it. Barbara.
However, in a past life, I could have been very similar to the person that you're referencing. My behaviors could have been that. I don't know that. I don't recollect that. So I just generically purify for what I did in past lives, because being around since beginningless time, I was probably that person.
And, in the teachings that I've heard, yes, we have been everything to and everyone. And, but there must have been some virtuous karma that enabled you to reincarnate as a human, to be doing okay in your life, to have a happy family life, to be able to access the Dharma teachings when you want to have the space and time to be able to practice and think. And that's why we do 28 of the mantra. You really only have to do 27, 21. But this extra purification of imprints, which has been added to the practice, that's what tries to purify the things we can't remember doing.
Oh.
And helps to, and so we have many seeds in our mind stream, of many seeds of negative karma. And so what we're doing is we're pulling out those seeds before they ripen in the future as suffering for us. Excuse me, it can only be a suffering mind that wants to murder and pillage. That's not a happy mind that does that. That's a very disturbed person. So that's a really horrible place to be. And that's where you can start thinking about having compassion for people. So this is why we need people, we need human beings, we need others as we rely on them to develop compassion. Because you look at that and they go, oh, that's horrible. Can you imagine being that person? No. So yeah. So it's good to always, because sometimes we have these habits. You hear these stories of I think I saw this story about this young child who she killed her brother. She was about 10 or 13, but she'd been on some ADD drugs, attention deficit disorder drugs. And her behavior had been altered a little bit by them. And then, in the video, you see her going, I don't know what happened, Mummy. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I did. I don't know. And they were quite close as siblings. And she had no idea how it came to be that she killed her brother, and she's devastated by it. But I would dare to say that this is some karmic seed, some imprint that ripened from the past. So we don't want to be that person either. So we need to be very, very careful of what is arising in the mind. And, we make comments in our mind, oh, that person's going to kill me when they find out. We say this in Australia a lot. I don't know. I don't hear it so much here. But I'm just like, oh, some of the language that we use is actually quite violent. Mm-hmm. And, we take shots with the camera. And I remember it was many years ago, Kunsong would sort of say, don't use that word shooting. And that was 10 years ago he was saying that. He's, like I said, he's passed away now. So I'm now thinking I'm taking a photograph. So we have there's a lot of usage of the English language in our slang that is actually implies violence. So we have to be careful about how we use our speech. And we have to be careful about the imprints that we might have. But right now, everybody here is wanting to practice a spiritual path quite sincerely. So I think you're doing okay, but don't be too afraid of what could be there because you're going to keep you up at night. You've also been a lion and many things and an ant and a whatever. So, I mean, I think it's like, as Venerable Robina would say, probably you're here right now. So we just worry about what we're dealing with. That's in front, what's in front of us. What we know is what we need to deal with. But it's always a good idea to be aware that there are imprints that could kind of ripen at any time. Yeah. Sheil, can I answer your question now? I'm sorry I kept you waiting.
No, that's okay. So is this practice sort of like something that we will do like throughout our lives, the Vajrasattva practice? Because like until we take our last breath, like it's something we do every night. And also, do we also do it in the morning? Or is it just a good practice for nighttime?
So Lamsa Rinpoche would say you're crazy not to do this every night. And if you can't do that whole practice every night, you can just do the short mantra, Om Vajrasattva Hum, and recite it a few times. And that's better than nothing. It's not quite the same as what we're doing is a fairly detailed, fairly extensive practice. We're kind of doing it properly. And yes, it would be advisable to do it to the end of your life. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it can only benefit you. But if you don't have time for that, then you just do the best you can. You can actually do this practice in about 5 minutes. You can do, you just shorten everything. Just do all the steps, but you can do it a lot shorter.
I have tried, like sometimes I find, because like our time, like I can't always, do it because the long version, because I run out of time and I have to get to bed.
Yeah.
But I say, okay, like at least something is good. So then I'll say the short version, but then I'll maybe visualize like one of the body, then one of the speech, and then one of the mind. If I just can't do the whole thing, is that okay sometimes?
Yeah, just do what you can.
Yeah,
Definitely. It's like Barbara was saying, Vajrasattva, about what Venerable Robina said to her. You're just only going to be where you're at the time, and we can't do everything all the time, and just do the best you can. I heard this story of Lama Lundrup, who was the head of the Kopan monastery for many years before he passed away. And I heard, he would go around, he'd be up till 2 a.m, walking around, making sure the monks were okay, particularly the baby monks who've just come down from the mountains. Some of them are like 8 years old. They're missing their parents. They don't speak Tibetan. They're a little bit lost. They're used to running around doing what they like in the mountains, and they come to the monastery and all of a sudden there's rules. They have to follow them. That's hard for them. Actually, when they come down from the mountains, they roam around in little gangs, and they're quite unruly. And it's so amazing how patient the monks are with them. They do things like they throw their Zen up into the tree and then they can't get it down, or they try and climb a tree and pick fruit. They're not allowed to do that, but they do it anyway. And everybody's watching them. They all know that they're not supposed to do that. And gradually, slowly, they learn to kind of bring their minds under control, but they're quite wild. Where was I? I don't know where I was going with that story. Anyway, so these baby monks are just where they're at. That's just where they are. And God, where was I going with that story? I'm sorry. Anyway, I lost it. Never mind.
we were talking about
Yeah.
You were talking about the monk at Kopan who has since died and what he said.
Oh, that's right. Sorry. Lundrup.
Yeah.
So he'd be up at 2 a.m. looking after all these bits and pieces and the administration of the monastery. And he did have an attendant, but he didn't really have like a Western assistant that was also up at 2 a.m. And so what he would do with his prayers and practices, which would have been quite extensive because he had taken quite a few empowerments and he would have had a lot of practice to do, he would just apologize to the Buddhas and say, I'm really sorry, I have to go to bed now. I can't. That's one story I heard. So, there are times in your life where you're not going to be able to do everything exactly perfectly. You just have to do it the best you can. And if all you can do is one long Vajrasattva mantra for each of the body, speech, and mind and imprints, that's better than nothing, because that's where you're turning your mind for that 5-minute period. And she'll also, even if that's too much, just do Om Vajrasattva Hum, because that embodies the whole of the long mantra as well.
And are we, when I do Om Vajrasattva Hum, am I doing the visualization of Vajrasattva above the head of my crown, and then I say the mantra?
The same time.
Uh-huh.
If you can manage it, but you can just visualize, if that's too much, you can sort of visualize a ball of white light, purifying white light, sort of kind of flowing into you, purifying each of the body, the speech, and the mind.
I see.
You can keep it really simple. You don't have to make it as elaborate as the Vajrasattva tanka that we see.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for doing the practice. It's amazing.
I love it.
The more these
can't do it all the time.
Yeah. The more these mantras get sent out into the world, the better, I think.
Yeah.
Nice to see you. Welcome back. Hin, hi. Okay, any more questions before I go on with Marion has one more piece of this. Can something be purified if we are unaware or conscious of it being negative? I think that's why we do that final wash. And I think because they leave imprints in the mind stream, actions from the past that we don't even remember, it leaves a kind of an imprint, which is why it possibly can, again, I think, I'm sorry to keep bringing you to murderers, but there was one case of one of these famous guys here in America, and I think he said he had no idea why he did what he did. And it's quite possible maybe he was some kind of lion or animal in the past that was a predator, and that was just the imprint that he brought with him. So, we want to be careful that if you can know that this is possible, we probably want to be careful that we don't want that. It's not something that we want, because it's a hugely suffering mind to be having to live a life like that. So we don't want to go there. We suffer from our own little kind of things we do wrong, but we don't want to be in a position where we're doing anything majorly wrong. And, sometimes we inadvertently say things that upset others we don't even know. And maybe years later, they'll go, well, you told me blah, blah, blah that time. And that really hurt my feelings. Like, why didn't you tell me? So we do need to be a little careful with our speech and our actions, Anybody have anything else they want to say?
Well, I wanted to ask, like there's this 3-month Vajrasattva retreat.
Yeah.
And so, or when people are from their guru, there's, you're requested to do 100,000 or 400,000. So I'm kind of curious about kind of the effects of being in a retreat like for 3 months, or if you've been given that practice to accomplish, then is it like you're just spending the whole day or sessions every day doing this practice?
It's not all day, every day. I mean, it is all day, every day, but you do have breaks, right? So here is the sadhana. You can order it online and you can read through it. And what I think after I did that one by myself in Australia on Kangaroo Island.
When you're in your 1-year retreat?
When I did, yeah. Which I spent most of the time talking to the kangaroos, taking flies out of my apartment, out of my house. I don't know. Anyway, I every time I go to Kopan, of course, it seems to be around the time of the year that the Vajrasattva retreat is going on, and they all seem to get so much benefit from it. So what they do, obviously, every morning they get up, they take, I don't know if they do precepts every morning, but, they get up, they do their morning practice. Annie Karen usually organizes the retreat. So they probably do their 35 Buddhas prostrations. So when I did it, I did that. And Venerable Rabino, I think, had me do Guru Puja in the morning as well. So I don't know that they go to that extent, but you probably do some morning prayers, some morning mantras, some 35 Buddhas, and then you would do 1 or 2 of the sadhana. So there's also a short one and a longer one. I think when you do a retreat like that, you have to do at least 1 of the long sadhana per day, and then you can do the shorter ones. And then I think what they do is they teach people, or they ask people to do to lead a session. So each of the participants in the group gets to lead a Vajrasattva session. And it's different to the one we're doing. There's kind of offerings involved and all kinds of different things. But you'll see it's, if you get the book, you can have a look. But it's definitely a worthwhile practice to do. And the thing about doing it in a group is everybody keeps you moving forward. And if you're running behind in your mantra count, you can sort of spend a bit of time in the Gompa doing it yourself. You're put in they have a special Gompa where they do it. So that becomes your group's practice place for 3 months. And I actually, you know what, I think they are on precepts, because I remember they always have to eat separately from us. And they always end up getting out of there before 12 or something like that. So I think they do take precepts. They get really quite nice food. So I think it's, I got the sense that it probably would have been a really great thing to do. So if anybody's even interested in doing that 100,000, I would do it. Mary's asking me a question. Oh, okay. This is what I'm doing right now, and I haven't put it up on the website, is I get sent the numbers every night, but I'm also counting. I see how many people are in the room, including myself, and I'm just writing it down in my diary, and then I add up at the end of the week how many we've done. So then what I have to do is I've been helping another friend with a retreat, so I'm a little bit behind on my website, but I think by August I want to start getting the numbers up regularly. And we also have to add a few people like William, who's not up on the thing, but yeah, so that's what I'm doing, Mary. I'm just assuming that everybody in the group is counting, is doing them. Do you have any more questions about that? Oh, no, you don't have to. If you want to, okay. So what Michael wanted to do was he wanted to do a Vajrasattva retreat on his own and then send the numbers. So if you're doing any Vajrasattva counting outside of our session and you would like to send numbers, you're welcome. No problem. But I would also personally, I would track how many you're counting if it's helpful. But it's not the same as doing the 100,000 Vajrasattva retreat. It's definitely not the same as doing that. It's a much, if you can do it, it's far better to go over to Kopa and put yourself in retreat and do it that way. I think you'll get more benefit from it. Because in our everyday life, I'll just count 100 today, and I'm going to do 100,000 mantras that way in between my other life. I think it's just not the same. You're not going to get the same impact, I don't think. I mean, it's definitely fantastic to do, but it's not going to impact you in quite the same way. Yeah. Marion, you had another question. No? Okay. Anybody else? No more questions? Bill, did you want to say something? Did someone just disappear? No?
I'll just ask.
Oh, sorry, Bill, then Sheila. Okay.
I'll just ask, those people that have been doing it for 2 years, does anyone want to recount how you feel like it's changed you over that period of time?
That could be personal, but if anybody wants to share, go ahead.
Sorry, Tashi's barking, but for me, working on my anger and my speech has helped tremendously, especially my anger. Listening to this all day long, I'm sure it would drive somebody insane. I haven't yet.
What's that? Is that barking? Ah.
It's Tashi, my dog. He just loves to bark.
What kind of dog is he?
He's a mutt.
He's a mutt.
90 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
He sounds loud. He is. He's big.
So Shayla, how does that manifest for you? You know, you say it's impacted your anger, but in what way? Do you want to give Bill an example, perhaps?
I'm slower to respond now.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's it's perfect, but I'm slower to lash out, and I can see when I'm just about ready to go over that precipice of anger and
Amazing.
walk away. Do I walk away all the time? No, but
Right.
it's just being able to view my mind just a little more clearly in some aspects. Still working on all of it.
Yeah, we're all working on it. But I think that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Because so you're saying you're a little bit more disciplined and less reactive. Yeah. Because, the thing is, once the words come out of the mouth and they land in another person's ear, it's really hard to undo all that. Then it's almost as if. So when I was living at Rinpoche's house, we had a very, very sweet Tibetan monk living with us. And from a cultural perspective, there were some things that we learned just not to say. And because sometimes the having to undo all of that and the repair of that took far more energy than just letting it fly, letting it go. And it's not saying that people should be allowed to walk all over you and to manipulate you and to do all those things that happen. It's better that we don't lash out and that we sit down and have a sensible conversation with someone when we're not feeling angry, if it's beneficial, if you think it's beneficial. Then if you think it's not beneficial, it's not going to land and it's going to end up in a bit of a twister, then we might need to consider whether, is this situation serving me very well? Is this situation something that's serving me? You might have to think about if it's not. Like if somebody is not respecting your boundaries.
That's where I run into difficulties setting the boundaries, because normally I just let it roll off my back until it builds up, and then.
Right, and then you lose it. Yeah. So I think also for women in our society, it's very hard to set boundaries. And it's hard to set boundaries, and then for ourselves to not just, oh, it's okay, I'll just let that one go this time. And then it builds up as resentment. It's difficult also to know what is a healthy boundary to set. And when you're first starting this process of setting boundaries, and it's just a boundary. It's not no, it's not I don't like you. It's a boundary. And, don't touch me on my head is a boundary. Don't, smoke around me is a boundary. And sometimes it's really hard to set those boundaries without feeling like you're a bad person. And then you go away and you feel guilty. Oh, I set a boundary. I'm such a bad person. It's difficult. It's difficult. But, it takes a while. We have to move into sort of a healthy way of not going too far one way or too far the other. And then if you're in a situation that's not serving you, you might have to think about that and be brave. And yeah, it's difficult. Life is not easy. Barbara, yes. And Sheila. And
I was just going to say to Bill, what is so helpful for me with the practice is intentionally reviewing my day, taking stock in my day. And that's the time where I do that. And then when I do fall short, which I do, I can think about, okay, what would I have done different? How could there have been a different outcome to that? So it's just really helpful for me from that perspective.
that's wonderful, Barbara. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Because we do that at the beginning, don't we? The very beginning, check what's going on in the mind. Although I haven't articulated specifically about, oh, I do, I think maybe a little bit ask about the day, but I think you've clarified it really nicely. Thank you so much. And I think that's what we should be doing at the end of the day anyway, just sitting quietly with ourselves and how was my day today? What did I do? It's almost like you would talk to your best friend. How was your day? What did you do? Sheila.
Yes, hi. I just want to put this out to everyone because I'm just curious. These practices are very ritualistic and they're not normal in society. Like, how do you talk to your, like when your friends, when you're with your friends or your family and you're, for example, you're doing the Vajrasattva practice, if you are doing like the 1000, how do you talk to your friends about it, or you mention it without feeling like this is sounding very strange of what I'm doing and they may feel uncomfortable around me? Like, how do you navigate around your practice and not let it not let you feel afraid to be proud that this is my practice? Like, if I was living in Nepal and I felt like I said to somebody, oh, I'm going to, Kopan to do a 3-month retreat on Vajrasattva, like they would be like, it would be so accepted. It would be, yeah, good, good for you. But I feel like living in the West, it's kind of a weird thing, at least for me, to be revealing to friends and family that this is my practice, because it might sound cultish or it might sound strange. I don't know how to navigate this. Can some of you help me?
Okay, Barbara, what do you think? Go for it.
Well, I can just tell you what I do. And that is, unless they ask, I don't talk about it.
Exactly.
And to be honest, most people don't ask. And when they do, it's like, oh, well, what class are you taking tonight? Oh, it's a class about the mind. Oh, okay. And then that's the end of it. So again, but that's why I long for being with people that speak the same language, is what I term it. Because I don't have to explain it.
Exactly.
It's just really, really nice. But again, I don't, unless people ask, I don't discuss it. And again, most people do not ask.
Like, I have, friends and family that, like to know, like, what am I doing? And, there are times I'm in a Zoom meet, participating in some sort of dharmic, Dharma talk or something. And I feel a little uncomfortable to say, so I don't know what to say. And then if I want to practice, that sometimes I just want my home to be a retreat and I don't want to talk to anyone. And I don't sometimes know how to navigate that, to say I am in retreat and, doing practice. I just, without them feeling like uncomfortable to be around me, like, am I in a cult or something?
One of the things that, you'll hear Venerable Ravina say quite frequently is it's nobody's business what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're living how many people in your family? How many people in your house?
Oh, no, like, I don't have people living with me.
Oh, perfect.
but like I have, there's this constant like community that I have that likes to connect, and we like to connect, but I don't really want to reveal, like I don't want to reveal my practice, and I want to know, like, is it okay just to kind of not reveal my practice?
Oh, yeah, you shouldn't reveal your practice.
Okay.
That's what they say. It's private. It's your practice. And if you think that by revealing your practice, it's going to impact people negatively, they'll think about you negatively, or they think you're in a cult or something like that. I mean, first of all, they should look at actually what cults are before that gets decided. But it's really a very, very personal, private thing. And we shouldn't really be discussing our practice with anyone. We're discussing it here with each other in a way that's helpful, but it becomes gossip other than that. Right. They're not interested in doing Vajrasattva practice. They just want to know what you're doing, and it's not their business. Right. Doesn't mean to say you don't love them, but you don't have to tell them everything. No. And you're not hiding things from people. You're not in a cult. It's just private. And there are some of these meditators up in the mountains in Dharamsala, up in Nepal, in Tibet. They just look like basic, ordinary people. What are you doing with your day? Oh, I make a cup of tea. I get up. They're never going to tell you all the secret practices they're doing. Right. Somehow it's either harmful or it dilutes. It's just private. Right. I guess I should just try, like, when I'm like all day today, right? I'm here, and I'm going to be speaking with, family and friends. Oh, what did you do today? Right. And I don't want to say, you know what, I was in a Zoom Dharma talk meet. Like, I don't want to say that. Well, you don't have to. You could say I was meditating. I did some meditation and had a chat with some friends. Some of my friends I meditate with, if you want to say that. Or you can just say, oh, I don't know, I was just doing this and that at home. Right. Yeah, because I feel like, am I lying? When you, like, I've taken that precept of, No, you're not lying. Okay. You're protecting yourself and also your friends. Yes, thank you. You just, I think Mordit put up something about being mindful. What did you mean by that, Mordit? Well, we have to stop soon because we're gonna do our practice together.
Oh, sorry, I just meant using when I talk with my friends, there was a workshop on mindfulness. Mm-hmm. Yes. I think that people understand that, and it's not, it's very.
Oh, yeah, you can just say you're doing some mindfulness meditation. Did a workshop on mindfulness. Right. Thank you all so much. Yeah, that's a great, thank you, Mordit. That's great, because everyone knows what mindfulness is. It's sort of sold everywhere on the internet. Yeah. But yeah, you don't have to tell people what you're doing. Okay. And I mean, if they saw the tankas, they'd be like, oh my God, that's so weird. Right. Or wow, that's such beautiful art. Yes. Yeah. But you're right. If you went to any single person in Nepal, any single person in Bodha, and any little Sherpa person, any little kind of Nepali, and they asked you what you're doing here, I'm here to do a retreat at Kopan, and they'd be like, oh, so good, so good. Yes. And you wouldn't have to explain anything. No. You're right, yeah. It's a different culture. Yes. So, Kenny, you had something to do, and I'd like to close our questions with Kenny, because I wanted to do our Vajrasattva practice together. So, Kenny, what did you want to say?
Yeah, I wanted to say to the person before me how it was to do it 2 years, the practice, how it feels. For me, I live with 24/7 and pain. So for me, it was like instead of smashing a bug, I catch the bug, I get up, I go downstairs, and I let the bug free. For me, that's a practice I do, in a short explanation. But I also have to say there is more there is more than one. Vajrasattva is one thing, You have to look at it. In Buddhism, there are many paths that lead to the same one. So it's not because one does this, you got to do that. You're gonna find your way in the years you practice. You're gonna find your way, and hopefully you're gonna get some empowerment, and you're gonna see the Vajrasattva meditation is really one that comes back when you get a bit more advanced in the practice, I would say. That's it.
Thank you, Kenny. I mean, that just reminded me to sort of say, it also comes back to what Barbara was saying. You're only going to be where you're at the time. And then as Kenny was saying, you keep coming back. It's more than just one practice in Tibetan Buddhism, and you just keep coming back and keep coming back. And after a while, you're like, oh, I'm doing this so much differently than I was 10 years ago. And it's going to be affected by what teachings you've listened to, who you've been talking to, how much practice you've been doing, what empowerments you've taken. It just kind of grows just like that. Yeah. So you have to kind of give it time. But Sheil, it's a really important question that you asked. And thank you, everybody, for your contribution, because it's helpful. It's really helpful. I don't have to explain what I'm doing because I'm dressed like this. And when I go to yoga, I'm usually in my yoga clothes, although everybody knows I'm a nun. And now other people have started to wear maroon as well. It's really funny. But I have to, some people like, oh, so you're a nun. I'm like, yeah, and that's it. That's where I stop, because I don't want to get into explaining anything more than that. And they're very polite here. They don't ask any more questions than that, which is quite sweet. But it's not always the way with everybody. Yeah. So also too, I have a clear boundary around me that says this is not your business. So it's something that's clear in my mind, and somehow it's visceral. People don't ask. So if you don't make yourself vulnerable to being asked, then you won't. But it takes a little bit of practice. If you think you have to be telling everybody everything about you, it's hard for them when all of a sudden you don't want to gossip all the time. Yes, it's none of your business. N-U-N. So true. Okay, everybody. So let's do Vajrasattva, and just settle into your meditation posture. I can't believe how fast this day's gone. It's very interesting. So Mary, do you have a copy of the image there by any chance, or who's hosting? Shayla, one of you guys. And Anna's co-hosting. Thank you so much for co-hosting. So Kenny, now we know you're here and you've got these physical stuff going on. We can include you in our practice at nighttime. So we'll think of you because we know you're going to be doing it the next day or something. So thank you for coming today and introducing yourself. Okay, I'm going to exit full screen. All right. So let's just settle back into your meditation posture. And, there may be many things swirling around in the mind. Feet flat on the floor if you're sitting on your chair. Shoulders aligned with the hips. You can have your hands wherever is most comfortable for you. Just going to... Okay. So take a nice deep breath. And then just remembering there is no negativity that cannot be purified. This is also the emptiness of negative actions, is that they can be purified. They're not fixed in cement. And I think this is why Rinpoche wants this focus on this emptiness of the three circles at the end of the practice. So we realize we can change. The mind is malleable. It is purifiable. So we're dealing with a psychological process here. And Lama Yeshe would say, we create negativity with our mind, so we can change it by creating positivity instead. So we're purifying using the 4 opponent powers, using this image of Vajrasattva, using Vajrasattva. So we can see Vajrasattva as our doctor. So we start with the power of regret. So sincerely regret from the depths of your heart anything you have done to harm any living being on this day, in this life, and in all past lives. And you can think of specific actions of both your body and your speech, and then in general, regret all. And the reason to regret is based on this logic of karma. And we experience everything due to our past karma, our past actions. So having harmed others, we ourselves will necessarily experience suffering in the future. And we cannot bear the thought of this future suffering that we're going to experience as a result of the harm we've done to others. We know from any present suffering that's happening, we don't like it. We don't necessarily want any more. So logically, it makes sense to remove the karmic seeds before they ripen as future suffering for us. So think like this. I regret from the depths of my heart having harmed others with my body and my speech, having broken my vows, because I do not want the future suffering. I'm sick of suffering. And also regret any anger, attachment, and the rest that are the cause of why we harm others. And think again, I'm sick of this suffering. And then think, what can I do about it? Whom can I turn to? So here we come to the power of reliance. And we turn to the Buddha, who we see as a doctor, who has the methods that we can use to purify. So we're really not asking this Buddha to forgive us. That's something you would do if you have some kind of higher power that's controlling you. It's not like that. This is a Buddha whose methods we're using to heal ourselves. We're relying upon his methods. So you can imagine this Vajrasattva above the crown of your head. You can also imagine this is your teacher. If you have a teacher, if you don't have to think about that. Manifesting in this aspect for your benefit. So this would be the mind of your teacher manifesting like this for you. And you can imagine this Vajrasattva, this image is male, made of radiant, blissful white light, sitting cross-legged on a white lotus and a moon cushion. And this lotus, although born out of mud, is untainted by mud. And this is just the same as our enlightened potential. It's born out of our delusions, but not tainted by them. So Vajrasattva has this beautiful radiant face. His eyes are long, they're peaceful, shaped like lotus petals, and they're full of love and compassion for you and all those people of your life. He has a sweet red mouth. His hair is black and held up in a top knot. His arms are crossed at his heart, the left underneath the right. The left is holding a bell representing wisdom. The right is holding a vajra, which represents the indestructibility of compassion, and they're being crossed, represents the union of these two. And this symbolizes enlightenment itself, the development of infinite wisdom and infinite compassion. To the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened. By this practice of meditating on Guru Vajrasattva, may I reach Buddhahood so as to benefit all sentient beings. So here we come to this little section on compassion. It's also reliance, because we rely upon others to develop compassion. So we need to rely upon beings we've harmed and those who have harmed us. So we develop a sense or wish for them to be free from suffering. So you can think particularly of someone you've harmed recently, in the past, and then in general, anyone you've maybe harmed since beginningless time. And just sort of have compassion for them. So all of these things we're doing, regret, developing compassion, this is also part of the purification process. This also kind of speaks to some of those things that you were asking, Marion, about kind of purifying things that I don't know I've done. And then remember those who have harmed you. This is a little more difficult for us because we want them to suffer, right? But no, you don't. Because that just continues the anger. You want to be compassionate towards them because they're going to suffer as a result of the harm that they've done to you. So we just have to let go of anger and resentment towards them. We make a strong aspiration to do this practice of purification for the sake of all these beings and think, I must purify for their sake. So now we come to the power of the remedy. And we can just see this as medicine. You know, the word mantra means mind protection. So we're using it as medicine here. And we start with the body, and Vajrasattva very compassionately sends powerful white nectar, like coming out of a hose, quite forcefully from his heart, and it arcs around and enters your crown and pours into your entire body, filling you completely. It keeps pouring into you until it forces out of your lower orifices all the harm you have ever done to any living being with your body in the form of inky liquid. And just imagine this pours out of you and disappears into space, not one atom left as you recite the mantra. And I'm going to do this first one quite slowly. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dinapatitam Dira Meboa Sutokaya Meboa Supokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpeyata Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sawakata Tata Gata Vajramame Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Pe Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dinapatita Dido Meboa Sutokaya Meboa Supokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sutta Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramame Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Pe Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dinapatita Dido Meboa Sutokaya Meboa Supokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Stawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sutta Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramame Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Pe. I'm going to go faster now. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dinapatita Dida Meboa Sutokaya Meboa Supokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sutta Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramame Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Pe Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dinapatita Dida Meboa Sutokaya Meboa Supokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sutta Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramame Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Pe Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dinapatita Dida Meboa Sutokaya Meboa Supokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sutta Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramame Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Pe Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dinapatita Dida Meboa Sutokaya Meboa Supokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sutta Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramame Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sattva Ahum Pe. So I just feel really delighted that all the harm you've ever done to any sentient being with your body is now completely purified, and think there's no way you could do anything but benefit others now with your body. So the minute they see you, they smell you, they get a sense that you're there, it benefits their mind. So next is the purification of the speech. And Vajrasattva again happily sends powerful nectar from his heart chakra, and it arcs around and forcefully enters your crown and fills your entire being, and forces up to the top of your body all the negativity of your speech. And this overflows and disappears into space, not one atom left. So you can imagine all the gossip and the harsh speech and the useless speech and lying and talking badly about others behind their backs, getting other people to agree with you. inappropriate speech. You know how we have those times where we don't know what the right thing to say is? Maybe it's not to say anything. So kind of wise, kind speech. So imagine the inability to think of kind, wise words. The inability to do that, that's purified. So that's all that comes out of your mouth. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Hanarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe. So again, feel so happy that your speech is now completely purified, and imagine it's not possible to do anything but benefit others now with your speech, even yourself, because you'll be hearing everything that falls out of your mouth. So just imagine you have that friend who's, disturbed or upset about something. Maybe you just want to sit in silence with them. Maybe you have some words of wisdom that will benefit their mind, that will be helpful for them. So you just pray that. Imagine that this is how your speech is now. And next is the purification of the mind, and Vajrasattva very compassionately sends powerful beams of light from his heart chakra, and this arcs around and enters your crown and fills your entire being. So the same as when you walk into a pitch black room and you flick on that switch, the light in the room dispels that darkness. So it's the same. You just try and imagine the light hits your heart chakra, and all the darkness of the negativity of your mind, all the attachment and neediness and anger and violence and depression, resentment, jealousy, bitterness, they're all instantly dispelled, not one atom left, as you recite the mantra. Om Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anarakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpiyata Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuruhum Ha 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 Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dida Meboa, Sitokaya Meboa, Sipokaya Meboa, Anurakta Meboa, Sawasidi Mimpi Yato Sawa Kama Sita Me, Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha Ho Bhagawan, Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe, Vajrasappa Samaya Manupalaya, Vajrasappa Dina Patita, Dida Meboa, Sitokaya Meboa, Sipokaya Meboa, Anurakta Meboa, Sawasidi Mimpi Yato Sawa Kama Sita Me, Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe Vajrasappa Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasappa Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anurakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpi Yato Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe Vajrasappa Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasappa Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anurakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpi Yato Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe Vajrasappa Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasappa Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anurakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpi Yato Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe. So again, be delighted that all your delusions, and these are the cause of our own suffering and why we harm others with our body and our speech. So just imagine they're gone, they're purified. So what would it be like to be free from delusion? What would that look like in your body, in your mind? Would your face look different? What would your life look like? And then think, now there's no space in your heart for anything other than love and kindness and forgiveness and wisdom and bliss and compassion. So no, we're just acting as if. As Barbara said, as Ben Burbina said to her, we're just going to be where we're at today. We just accept where we're at and be okay with it. This is where we are. So next is the purification of even the imprints of negativity of the body, speech, and mind. So imagine Vajrasattva sending light and nectar fills you completely. And it's sort of like an energetic thing here. So it eradicates even the subtlest imprints of negative energy from the mind. Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anurakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpi Yato Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dida Meboa, Sitokaya Meboa, Sipokaya Meboa, Anurakta Meboa, Sawasidi Mimpi Yato Sawa Kama Sita Me, Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha Ho Bhagawan, Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe. Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya, Vajrasattva Dina Patita, Dida Meboa, Sitokaya Meboa, Sipokaya Meboa, Anurakta Meboa, Sawasidi Mimpi Yato Sawa Kama Sita Me, Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anurakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpi Yato Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha Ho Bhagawan Sawa Tata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabawa Mahasamaya Sata A Hum Pe Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dida Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anurakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpi Yato Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sawatata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabala Mahasamaya Sata Hum Pe Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dita Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anurakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpi Yata Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sawatata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabala Mahasamaya Sata Hum Pe Vajrasattva Samaya Manupalaya Vajrasattva Dina Patita Dita Meboa Sitokaya Meboa Sipokaya Meboa Anurakta Meboa Sawasidi Mimpi Yata Sawa Kama Sita Me Sitam Shriyam Kuru Hum Ha 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 Ho Bhagavan Sawatata Gata Vajramami Mutta Vajrabala Mahasamaya Sata Hum Pe. So now we feel completely purified. Just imagine that. Try and feel, act as if not one atom of negativity left in your mind stream. Even the subtlest obscurations to your enlightenment have been removed. So really try and imagine how that would feel to have the absence of delusion in the mind, the absence of illness in the body. So next is the power of resolve, and this is a really important part of the purification process, because we're not going to move forward without making a decision to not harm, or to even think about refraining from harming. So we have a determination, a decision to not harm with our body and our speech and our mind. And without this, we're going to keep doing the same old things over and over again. And this aspiration, this determination is like a lamp, a beacon that guides our body and speech and mind in new directions. So everything exists on the tip of the wish. We're not going to do anything until we decide. We're not going to get up and walk out of the room until we decide that's what I'm going to do. So we just decide, I don't want to harm, and I'm going to work on some things that I know might be harmful, that might hurt people, and I'm going to think about refraining from them. So it might be not being so reactive. It might be noticing when anger is arising and trying to change it. So we think about something that we'd like to work with. First of all, really rejoice in the progress that you've made. Take a note of it, journal about it, think about it. And then actually, as Bill was asking, you can actually see your progress. Oh gosh, 2 years ago I was doing that, now I'm not. How amazing. So it's not going to happen overnight either. So you have to be patient as well. So this determination to think about refraining from things is what gives us strength to kind of try and change and make a difference. And Vajrasattva is delighted with us and wanting to merge with your mind, melts into white light and absorbs into you through your crown. And you can think that if you have a teacher, that the mind of that teacher and body and Vajrasattva's body, speech and mind and my own body, speech and mind become the same. My teacher's speech as well. So you're merging with the holy, this kind of holy energy, this beautiful energy, compassionate, wise energy. So you're aligning yourself with that energy versus the delusion kind of energy, the negative, uncomfortable, angry, bitter kind of energy. You want to align yourself more with more positive, virtuous types of energy. And so we think here, this is where you bring in the 3 circles. This is where we know we can change. There is no I in emptiness. There is no creator of negative karma, and then there is no action of creating negative karma. There is no negative karma created. As we were saying earlier, negativity is different for different people. So place your mind in that emptiness, that space for a little while, as we've had a lot to chew on today. And you can think of all phenomena as being empty. They don't exist from their own side. You can also think the way things appear to me may not necessarily be the way they actually exist. So let's just dedicate the merit from the whole of today, from the beginning of today, where we did a very simple purification meditation. And we had discussions about what negativity means for different people. We had some wonderful input from people. We had some great questions. So thank you so very much for all of your interest, your commitment to this practice, and to yourselves, to your own practices, which is the most important. So I think may all the virtuous karma I've created from doing this practice ripen as my enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings as quickly as possible. Okay, so we're a little bit past the hour. So I just wanted to say that if any of you have teachers in your own practice, so just imagine them, wish for them to live a long life. So you may have different teachers in different lineages than FPMT. So bring your teacher to mind if you have one. Then we can think maybe of His Holiness the Dalai Lama living a long time. And then we can think maybe of if Lama Zopa Rinpoche is your teacher or has been your teacher, just wish for him to return as quickly as possible, this unmistaken reincarnation. Okay, everybody. Can't thank you enough to give up the whole of your Saturday, most of you, and for the afternoon, for some of you. Thank you so very much. It's wonderful for everybody to have got together. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was of some benefit for you. And particularly you people in Europe, and then you people on the East Coast, starting to get late now. So thank you very much. Okay, everyone. Lots of love. And thanks for our hosts, Anna and Shayla, and Mary was probably watching the door as well. So thank you very much, you guys. Because what it means is when you're hosting and you're actually watching out for people who are Zoom bombing, it means you don't get to engage in the practice fully. So I really appreciate you giving up your time to do that. So thank you very much. All right, everybody. Lots of love. Great questions. Thank you very much. And I will see you on Monday. Some of you. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.